Ah, shit! Everybody's dying! No! Fuck! Come on, man.
Hey, man, the fuck? Why you noob?
Shut up, man!
What do you mean? At least check logs and improve at your class.
Okay, let's see. Let's see. I think I got it now.
Oh, yeah? Think we can actually play without scaring you anymore?
Yeah, man. Logs are actually very helpful.
I know, dude. Just get good, okay?
Yeah, about that. Use your fucking cooldowns, you doorknob. Because I am el curador criticalando.
Sure, learn your cooldowns. But first, please click the like and subscribe button. You know, the things with the channel, with the YouTube and stuff. Those things, those are actually important because right now, YouTube is kind of fucking us in the butt. This is so weird. Man, why do I have to do this so many hundreds of times? We love you guys. Let's just watch the video. I'm not even gonna edit this because we like to keep it from the heart. Because from the heart is how you heal everybody. Oh! Well, when logging as a healer as opposed to a DPS, you will be interested in vastly different things, although maybe not that different. Raw HPS is not as important or even the goal that you should have as a healer. Your goal is for everyone to survive in DPS with little to no additional downtime, save for what the fight's mechanics will presume. Numbers work differently for healers since the survival of your group is highly dependent on your output, among other things. So naturally, your spec will likely be able to do way more HPS than it is needed to end an encounter successfully. As such, people who usually have very high, very high parses, I said that multiple times, and this is true for non-healers as well, fall into two main categories. Very good, the best even of players when this is in the first few weeks of a raid, since this argument really applies to raiding only, or people who have their co-healers log out or AFK so that they can have all the healing done by themselves. This is a bit simplistic, but the thing is, when a raid comes out and the top guilds vie for the quickest clear to get into the Hall of Fame or, you know, win the fucking world first, everyone will be playing as optimally as possible, and whatever they do is hardly applicable to you and me, aka running one or two fewer healers, having the HPS handled by half of the people, and more HPS per person, or they simply optimize every single person's performance for max clear speed. The other end of the argument is that once geared enough, other healers play the logs, like we mentioned in the DPS video we had on the logs. They can have their raid buddies fuel their HPS by either not healing themselves, DPSing instead of healing, just so that the HPS output of said person is not an overheal. This is also not relevant to you since, although it is indicative of a person's skill as a healer, it's not a redundant metric by which to establish a ranking. Very high HPS overall, that is. When the healing matters most, you will not be farming the bosses and able to afford to use gimmicks to boost your HPS. If you really want to look at good logs when it comes to actual relevant performance, the closest you can get is checking a difficult fight, say a mythic boss, and filter it firstly by healing done, with the classes selected, and make sure to check the date of the log to be as early as possible into the raid tier, meaning people would have had less gear and less of a chance to cheese or gimmick logs to get a high HPS value overall. This depends always on the raid tier, so there is no exact rule that can apply everywhere. Or simply go on the respective healer discords and ask people for good logs to give you and use them as reference against your own. With that out of the way, let's actually check what logs can be good for when it comes to healing. Whether you are raiding or pushing Mythic Plus, planning cooldowns is always ideal for a smooth run with minimal risks to your group's survivability. There are plenty of resources for you to access to get acquainted with the encounters, starting from Dungeon Journal to websites like questionablyepic.com and even Discord communities or spec-specific websites such as Peak of Serenity, Warcraft Priests, Dream Grove, and so on. Your knowledge can also come from simply playing the game. The reason all of this is important is that you can adjust what cooldowns you use when For instance, in dungeons, you want to know what pack can be solved by what cooldown. In raids, you want to have a healthy communication with your healer so that the cooldowns are aligned efficiently versus what the boss will do to the raid. And here is where logs can help you out. You can log fights, particularly wipes or simply runs that you want to optimize. You can look at the damage taken tab and select the person you are interested in analyzing. This can usually be a tank or a DPS that was supposed to soak but died, or any member of your group on whom healing can be improved. You'll get a graph with colored areas based on the amount of damage taken, with the highest peaks of the graph representing the spikes in damage taken. What you can do is take your mouse cursor and drag over the area of high damage intake, and the logs will update with just the part of the fight showing you what abilities damaged your targets during that interval. You can even switch to timelines at the top right to actually see the order and such. Hovering over each colored zone on the graph will also tell you what did what damage to your target. Once you have the timeline selected, going to the player you are observing and changing to you or the healer of your choice will show what healing was done during that specific period. Hovering over the healing spells and cooldowns used shows how much they did on each affected target and so on. This is ideal for you to align your cooldowns properly with mechanics designed to fuck up your group. Check which ones you've used, if you've used any, and decide if that was good, if you want to switch it up and so on. This sounds all a bit vague because really there's no general rule here. As a healer, you need to be able to adapt and optimize based on your individual circumstance, and having the possibility and the ability to read logs and understand what happened in the fight, you can adjust for future fights as well. And of course, this brings us to why it is important to do this, besides the obvious, saving your teammates. Check to see if more than the necessary amount of cooldowns were used. Say you have a segment of the fight selected, like I mentioned earlier, you can look at the cast section of the log and see who casted what, particularly your co-healers, and maybe even tanks when it comes to their defensives. When you overlap cooldowns too much, you will survive the mechanic with gusto, sure, but you won't have a cooldown or two later when you might need it more, as opposed to the current segment that could have been just optimized. This can be applied to dungeons as well when communicating with your tank, and yeah, communication is your key and realistically the best way to prevent unnecessary overlap, say from a lot, and I mean a lot of weak cards where you could simply track what everybody uses for their cooldowns, which is also not that efficient, since if you play a disciplined priest or rest or druid, you cannot wait for the last second to see who casts what to prevent overlapping, since you have ramps or preps into using some of your healer cooldowns. Outside a few healer specs where doing damage is part of the healing rotation, aka holy paladins, disciplined priests, and fist weaving monks, doing damage will be a choice. And here we can talk about the ABC of WoW, which applies to all roles as well. Our bitch is crazy. Yeah, no. Ow. Oh, it was a joke. Oh, it was a joke. Always be casting is what ABC really stands for. This refers to optimizing your globals, and by globals, think of any button you can press that would incur the global cooldown. Sometimes you don't need to spam that healing surge if your target is at 97% HP, because don't forget, some tanks have their own personal healing system, and DPSers as well, and it is to nobody's benefit if either side wastes their resource or you your mana. That's a good time when you can squeeze in a Flame Shock or a Sunfire or a Shadow Warp Pain. And this can be easily analyzed when you look at, again, the timeline of the encounter. You can see when damage is about to happen, and if you are outside of those high peaks of damage intake periods, you can safely DPS a bit more. There are also points during the fight like Phase 3 Fate Scribe, for instance, which is a very tight DPS check before the enrage, where doing damage matters way more if you can afford it. Whether or not you use logs to decide this or use them to see if the choice you made was correct, logs will help nonetheless. When a fight is over, a wipe called or the dungeon cleared, and you have some time for reflection, pull up your log and click the Deaths tab. There you will obviously see everyone who died. If you click a person, you will get a list of abilities that happened leading up to that person's death. You can firstly see what killed that person and what heals the person received prior to dying. This is particularly helpful when trying to figure out what you could have done better. Yes, I am sure it's nice to realize you did everything perfectly, the way you could, and the blame falls on the other healer. But pointing fingers won't make you a better healer. Let your raid leader deal with that nonsense. And as a consequence, if you did do everything you could, you can just as well learn what worked the best in preventing your death, or your target's death, making you wiser to your spec and its inner workings. This intelligence regarding deaths can simply be applied to any event that happens throughout an encounter, similarly to how we discussed about cooldowns, mitigating high damage intake phases, and so on. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to healer logs. It's not as simple and as straightforward as for DPS, but it is very helpful to understand what happens throughout the fight, how and when you could have used certain things. And obviously all of these videos kind of tie into each other because it gets a little bit boring if we have to repeat everything in every video. So for instance, if you want to check timelines of cooldowns and abilities and openers, you can watch the DPS video. If you want to check how many times you've casted certain cooldowns and how efficient you were with overall uptime, you can check the tank video. All of them are what we hope to believe that they're helpful for you and they help you in, you know, becoming a better player overall. And of course, we couldn't have done this without the help of the wonderful theory crafters of the healer communities on Discord. And you can catch, and you should check all of them for your respective spec. And of course, check websites like questionablyepic.com, Dreamgrove, Ancestral Guidance, Warcraft Priest, Peak of Serenity, and so on. Thank you very much to the healers of the community that helped us with feedback and understanding exactly what logs are good for healers and made this video possible. You guys rock. Thank you to the Patreons who also fucking rock. That was unexpected, but that's how much we appreciate you guys, because actually YouTube is kind of fucking us in the butt right now. Because just YouTube bullshit, it's fine, that doesn't really matter, but we do actually really appreciate your support and you make a lot of this happen. It doesn't go unnoticed, and if you've noticed anything that changed in our quality, in our video types, it's because of you supporting the channel. And if you, dear viewer, want to support us a little bit more, you want to, you know, see what's going on with the Patreon page, you can check the link down below and you'll find everything that you need. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.